Hi class, I'd like to take a few minutes to go over our next chapter, Chapter 7, but before I do that I've got a couple of announcements. Number one, your first exam will cover chapters 1, 2, 6, and 7. It's going to be a stay-at-home exam. It's going to open up on Tuesday, February 16th at noon, and then it closes Wednesday night at midnight. So you have a little over 24 hours to do it. I want to briefly explain the format. The format of the exam will be roughly 6 to 8 short answer questions. There'll be calculations, there'll be graphs from the production possibilities curve. The very best way to prepare for the exam is to go back and review your APLIA problem sets. Some of the questions won't be exact, but those, I think, are the very best preparation. So make sure that you study the textbook chapter, you use the lessons, but I think a good measure of your ability to succeed on the exam will be your mastery of those projects in the APLIA problem set. So I'll talk a little bit more. I'll send some reminders out and give you some more information about the exam, and you're welcome to ask me any questions that you might have. So again, the exam will cover chapters 1, 2, 6, and 7, opens Tuesday, February 16th, and closes Wednesday at midnight. If for some reason that intersects with your work schedule, you'll need to let me know as soon as possible so I can make other arrangements. You'll download the exam, you'll be able to do the exam using paper and pencil, and then you'll upload it back up. I'll give you more directions. I'm actually playing around with some different technology to see if I can make that process simple and smooth for you. So more information on that coming up, and I'll keep you apprised of all of that. So looking back at Chapter 6, I do want to say make sure that you keep your data on your market basket. We won't return to that this week, but we'll return in a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, and collect some more data and start to track how that data is changing over time and see what we can learn from it. This week we're going to look at gross domestic product. So as we get started, I want to share some data with you about gross domestic product. It's one of the central measures of the performance of a macroeconomy. Gross domestic product measures the market value of all goods and services produced by a nation. So it's really our best estimate for the particular wealth of a nation. So let's take a look at some data. First of all, I want to start out here looking at overall GDP levels for the U.S. If we zero in right now, you can see that the overall GDP is $21.5 trillion. A trillion has a lot of zeros, I can tell you that. And you can see that over time, GDP has increased, and these are the raw numbers of GDP. Now, I want to explain, usually when we talk about GDP, we discuss it as a percentage change over a period of time, typically a year, but sometimes a quarter, which is a 3-month period of time. So let's look at our next graph here, and this is the percent change in GDP since World War II. You can see a lot is going on here in 2020, but you can see that obviously to the definition of a recession is when GDP is negative for 2 consecutive quarters. And so you can see sometimes GDP, the percent change over a period of time, is negative in periods of recession, and you can see it's jagged. Since World War II, GDP has grown at an average of about 3 percentage points per year. So that's kind of a healthy target. This year, let's take a closer look at what's happening with GDP. And the Bureau of Economic Analysis, that is the division of government that publishes the official real gross domestic product numbers. The term real means that it's adjusted for inflation. And you can take a look here. Let's zero in on 2020. And in the last quarter, GDP grew at 4%. The previous quarter, it actually grew over 30%. And the previous quarter in quarter 2, it was about negative 30% due to the pandemic and the recovery. If you average that all out, GDP decreased in 2020 by 3.5 percentage points. So that's a significant decrease in GDP. Of course, we could recover from that. Some economists are estimating that we'll achieve our previous pre-COVID GDP levels by mid or late 2021. We'll see about that. Another measure we're going to learn about in this unit is GDP per capita. GDP per capita is a simple calculation. It takes total GDP in a nation and divides it by its population. So it's an average level of income. You can see that in this chart, I've posted, this is a Google World Development Indicators chart. You can make your own. It's pretty cool. You can choose different countries over here on the left. So if I want to add on Bangladesh, it adds it on for me in the graph. But let's take a look at some of these countries. So the U.S. has a GDP per capita of $62,000. I wanted to compare that to other Western advanced countries like Sweden, 54, and the UK, 42. But I also wanted to include some other countries that you might be familiar with. Chile, which is among the wealthiest countries in South America, has a GDP per capita of $16,000. Mexico has a GDP per capita under 10, which is just about the world's average if you took the world GDP and divided it by population. And then we've got some really poor countries down here. Haiti, 868. That's about roughly $3 per day of income. And then Afghanistan, 520. Bangladesh, which I just posted at 1,600. These are among the world's poorest countries. So GDP per capita gives us an average measure of wealth in a nation, and it's something we'll come back to throughout the semester. All right, so that's a little bit about GDP and some of the data that you're going to be learning about. Let's take a look at what you need to do this week. In the chapter outline, you'll see you've got a discussion, a pre-class question, a quiz, and 2 APLIA problem sets. The other thing is a questionnaire on course feedback, information I like to gather to see how the class is going for you about a third of the way through. So the discussion's a little bit different, you guys. It's a photo contest. I want you to go out, snap a photo by Thursday night, and post it. And what I'm looking for is for you to find an image that really captures the Great Suppression. So it's kind of a little bit of a different discussion, gives you a chance to express yourself in a different way, and you'll post a paragraph that explains that picture, that gives some context to it, and any details you want to share. The winner gets a prize. So next week, we're going to vote. Y'all are going to choose the best photo. So more on that later. Your job is to post that photo and a summary of it. Make sure you read the textbook. It's always the first thing that you should be doing, as well as completing the pre-class assignment. I think you'll also find the lesson very useful. There are videos of me doing problems to help you with the formulas and help you with the APLIA problem sets. And as usual, a quiz and 2 APLIA problem sets. Now, as I mentioned, there's a questionnaire that's also due on Sunday night, the 14th, and the questionnaire is some questions about how this class is going for you. It's anonymous, so post your feedback and let me know what I can change. I do hope the class is going well for you and that you're learning tons and tons about the economy. Again, February the 16th is your first exam. That week, the week of February 15th, will be a very light week. I'll have maybe a couple of assignments and maybe getting you started on our next chapter. But other than the exam, that'll be your main focus. All right, folks, I hope you have a great week. Let me know if I can help with anything at all, and I'll see you online.